Hi, in this video I want to cover off the new WP pipeline upgrade. This is to version 1.2 and it's an upgrade of both the master plugin and the slave plugin. The main update in this is the blog backup management. We're still using BackWP. So the first thing you need to do for the update is to accept the update and update your master control plugin to get your master site up to date. And then make sure that all the slave blogs that you want to deal with are also up to date as well. Make sure the WordPress versions at least are up to date. And when you check that, you can run refresh updates information if needs be, and you should find that you've got some yellow traffic lights now in the P column, in the plugin column, because all the slave plugins will need updating to version 1.2 as well. And you can do that as normal by selecting all the blogs and going update all plugins, and of course you can run off and update all those plugins. Now, I've already done that for the sake of this video just to save some time. So as I said, with the new version 1.2 it will actually remove the backup module from the slave blogs. And if we go over to the blog backup management page, I'm just going to select that page, take us there, and you'll now see that it looks somewhat different than the old WPP version page. On the right hand side here we used to have a default configuration for the backups, which was a fairly simplistic amount of settings that you could do. That's now been removed and we've got direct integration with the new plugin, which we can select. You see now on the drop down menu, instead of just configure blogs and run configure backups and run backups, we now have a whole list of options. Now there's one special option here. This is the BackWP up version 2 to version 3, and we need to run this once. What we need to do is just all the existing jobs, the existing backup jobs that are there. If you have existing backup jobs from version 2, they do need to be converted to version 3 jobs, and this will do that for you. And if I now just click this version 2 to version 3 and just do it, it will just open up a tab for each of the blogs in the list and we'll complete that process for us. So if looking at each one of these now, as they come in, you will see in the BackWP backup dashboard. Okay, that means everyone's been set up okay. So I can go back to my WP pipeline. Once again, I'm just going to close off the other tabs just to tidy it up for the demo. And now what we have is the ability to, as I said, access any of the dashboard. We can run, edit, and view backup jobs. That's the actual the jobs we create to do the backups. We can add a new backup job, or we can view the logs of the blogs that have already been backed up, and we've got some backup archives so we can actually look at the backups themselves. And there's some settings and information. Again, is one of the other settings. We'll just have a little look through those now. Now, we already looked at the dashboard. I'm just going to look in one of these now. So going for this first blog here, and we're just going to open that up, and we open the dashboard up, and it'll go straight to the blog for us. Open up the dashboard, and from here you can see actually we can go and check the installations and create a job, run the create jobs, and check the actual job log for any of the jobs already done. Now, you can't see anything at the moment because nothing's been done on here, but you will see the next scheduled jobs, etc., and the last logs. So you'll see what's going on within this kind of dashboard area. Okay, with everything configured, let's just have a little look at how we can create a job and get all this working. Okay, I'll just have a quick look first at the it says view backup jobs. Now this will look at any existing jobs. And I said once you've installed this, if you have any jobs already in there, they will remain intact and you'll be able to see them in this list here. You can see I've got 3 jobs set up here at the moment. But I'm going to create a new one. So let's just go back to our WP pipeline and let me just add new backup job. Now again, all these will open up in this same tab. So if I now look at the backup job creation area, you kind of see it's familiar to the old version 2, but it's in a much more kind of clean and tidy layout and an operation the way it works. Now what we've got at the top here is a number of tabs. We need to configure each of those tabs when we do a job to make sure that's all okay. And again, unlike version 2, you have 100% control over everything. You're not limited to just the small amount of settings that were given to you on the main page. Now you have full access to the plugin. So let's just go down setting up a job. Now the first part is to, let's just put a name in there a minute. I'm just going to call this test Tony just for this demo. And we can see that we have here a database backup, file backup, and installed plugin list. Now you can select or deselect these as you like. We'll just talk quickly about this installed plugin list. Now, an installed plugin list is new to version 3 and basically is literally just a list of the installed plugins. Now, the reason that's in there and quite useful is in an emergency, you can kind of restore pretty much all your blog or all your site simply from this installed plugin list and a database backup. What you can do, say, is to install a fresh copy of WordPress. You could then check the installed plugin list and then install all the plugins on that list. And then by importing the database, that will reconfigure all the plugins, add back in your posts and pages and other configurations, and you'll pretty much have your blog back. Now, the only thing you wouldn't have from that situation would be things like media files that were loaded up and images, etc., that were loaded up into the blog, but everything else is held in the database. So that will be an emergency way of getting your information back. But obviously, it's much better to have a way to get it back completely, and for that you do a full backup, and a full backup really consists of all your files and your database. That will give you a full backup. Now, most of the blog is kept in the database. I say all your posts and pages and configuration are kept in the database, so you ought to be doing a database backup probably daily if your blog got any change at all. And you maybe want to back up your files probably on a lesser basis, maybe weekly or monthly, depending, I say, on the change of the speed of change of your blog. Is entirely up to you. That's your decision. You've got to make that decision on what's best for your particular circumstances and your blog. So at the moment, I'm going to leave all those three in there. As I said, you could just take them out and do whatever you want. And what you'll notice is these tabs are dynamic. So as I take the database away, you'll see that tab disappears. Similar if I take the files away, you'll see the files tab disappears. So I'll put those back for the moment. And we'll just scroll down and see what other configurations we need to do. Now, there are a number of configurations on here, but I'm just going to go through the basics. So obviously the next basic thing we need is a destination. Now this is another improvement in this version 3, and we can have multiple destinations. So if you think about that, let's say for instance we want to back up to Dropbox and to S3, then we would have a backup on two completely different locations. So you've got what we call 100% redundancy. In other words, if it was a complete failure in one, due to circumstances like S3 lost it, or you would have still 100% of your backup on one of the other destinations. That way, it's a very, very secure way of storing your backup. So if you've got absolutely crucial that you need to keep your backups stored at that level of security, then this is the way to do it, and it's fully available in here. Now, the only downside of that, of course, is if you do twice the backups, you've got twice the time and twice the load on the server. But as I said, you have to balance that with the security that you want. Now, no, sorry, let's just put those back in. And again, if I go up to the top here, I'll see it then opens up a tab for each of those. And of course, I would need to put in my Dropbox credentials in here. And similarly, my S3 access keys, etc., would need to be configured in here. And if you, as I said, if you configure each one, you need to save them off. Now, let's go back to the general tab for the moment, just to set up my general settings. So I'm going to just go on the demo video. We're going to cover a backup to folder. That's just a local folder in the same domain or on the same domain as your blog. It's not the safest way to do it, but for demo purposes, probably the simplest. So I'm going to save those changes. And then we're going to go through each of the tabs now to make sure that those are all set up as well. So one option we have here is a schedule. And at the moment, that's set to manual, but I could set it with the WordPress cron, which is the kind of standard way to do it. And you can now set the monthly, weekly, daily, whatever backups you want and what day, what hour you want them to be done just off the list here, and save those changes. Alternatively, if you don't want to run the WordPress cron, or in some cases, some people don't run it for technical reasons, then you can use an external cron, i.e. the server cron or an external cron service to drive that particular link, and that will regularly check that your backups to see whether they need running. Now I'm just going to run manually for this one. So I'm just going to save those changes off. Database backup is the next one. Now we're backing up the database, and that's allowed us a tab there. And I'm going to back up all the database by clicking the All button. Generally, you would want to back up all the database If you want to back up less than all the database, you would have to have a special reason for doing that. So if you can't think of any reason why you shouldn't be, then you should be backing them all up. And save the changes once more. Okay, check in the Files tab. Basically, everything is selected by default, so it will back everything up. There may be some things you don't want to back up in the files. For instance, here I've got WP snapshots. That's where Duplicator saves its clone packages. We don't really want to back those up because they'll be quite large and just bulky, and they're just copies of our website anyway, so we don't really want to back them up. So I will select that to actually exclude backing that up and just save time and space. Okay, similarly, I need to save those off. The plugin is just a list of plugins, and that's just a default one, but I'll go into that. And the to folder, we'll go in there, but we don't need to because it will default to a folder called BackWP, and there'll be just a random set of characters or random set of numbers and letters to make that unique. But you can, of course, put your own name in there if you want to, but default will work fine. And for us, I'm just going to go for the default. Okay, with that done, we have the job now created and complete. So I'm going to go back to my WPP. I'm going to show you it from here because, of course, you could access all these for any reason, not just for running through a job completely like this. So let's just say we want to run that job now, and I can actually go to the Run, Edit, View Jobs again. And this time when I check the tab, I now see we've got 4 jobs in the list. And this is the Test Tony one, the one we just created. And let's just run that job now. I'll run that manually so you can see exactly what happens when a job runs. As you can see, we get an indication bars here of what's going on. It shouldn't take too long to go through here. It's a fairly small blog. So it will just take a few seconds to complete. And it's whizzing along nicely. And in fact, it's now finished. Okay, if I look down here, we can see the last job that's run, which is the one we just tested, and there is a log file for it. But again, for demo purposes, I'm going to go back to WPP, and of course, from our control panel, we can access the logs directly. And again, into the same tab, if I look in the logs, then the last log, the one nearest the top, will always be the most recent. As you can see here, we've got OK, so we've had a successful backup, and I can download, delete, or view the log. Now, we've got a successful backup, so everything should be okay, but I'm going to view the log just so you can see it. And you'll probably recognize it if you've looked at it from version 2. Very similar layout as before, with just everything that happens as the backup is done. So as I say, if everything's okay, you're not going to see much other than everything being completed. But if you have had problems with it or you've got errors in the status, then this is where you need to come and look to try and see what's going on. Okay, back to our main blog again, and I just want to show you that we can actually see the backup archives themselves. So let's just select Backup Archives and go there. And again, we can now see these are the actual backups that are stored away. Again, the latest one is at the top. So if I look down here, we've got the option to delete or download. And if I download, then it will open up a download. It will download the zip file for me. I can download this to my PC and do with it whatever it is that I want. So that's all nice and easy. Okay, and one final step, we go back to our WPP main blog again, and this time we're just going to look at the settings and information. Now, this may be useful. Some of the default settings, again, back in this tab. Let's just have a look. We've got a layout similar to the job creation one. We've got a number of tabs at the top here, so we can check through each of those and just see what we've got. In the first general tab, basically everything should be left as default. We've got protect folders here checked. In other words, the backup folders will be protected by htaccess and index.php. This means it's got a higher security. You don't really want to save it off into folders where people can access it from outside and start stealing your backups, as it were, because of course the information in your backups will be as much as the information on your main sites. You wouldn't want to kind of lose the back end of those, so you need to protect your backups. So in the job tab, there are a couple of settings worthy of note. For instance, the maximum number of retries per job I've set at 3, but I suggest you leave it at 3. That just means that if the job has any trouble running, it will retry 3 times before it gives up completely. That helps in case there's any outside network influences that are stopping the job to happen, it will kind of retry. And the other setting, which is currently set as disabled, is for reducing server load. So if your backups are large or you're on a shared server that
your hosting may feel you're using a lot of their resources to do the backups, then you can select a minimum, medium, or maximum reduction of server load here. So it kind of works backwards. In other words, when it says minimum, that's the most server load. So this is the amount of server load reduction we're talking about. The other option is reduce server load. So if you're on a shared server and the host is telling you you're using too much resources by doing a lot of backups, then you can kind of reduce the load by setting this to minimum, medium, or maximum. Maximum being the maximum amount of reduced load on the server. So it's kind of backwards in some sense. If you look on the little question marks here, they will always tell you what's going on and give you some idea, so you can use those if you want to see what the settings are. As you see, this one adds kind of short pauses to the process, which helps reduce CPU load. Okay, so maximum is the longest sleep, it's saying. So in other words, it will stop the process with gaps of time. It'll take longer, obviously, to do that, but it will reduce the load on the server. So you're better off trying to have it disabled originally. If you've got no problems, fantastic, and only kind of use it if you've got problems. The logs, relatively simple. You just basically tell you where you put the logs or the amount of logs that you have. Obviously, whatever logs you have in here, the oldest one will be overwritten by the newest log when it reaches its maximum. Network and API keys I won't go into because they're not really relevant for WPP, but the information is useful. This is basically a system check to see that everything is okay that is required for WP Backup to work. If there are any issues, it will flag it up in here. And again, it's also maybe a place to come if you've got some problems and you want to check that all your system is fully capable of allowing the WP Backup to work correctly. Okay, that kind of finishes off our swift run through of the new backup system in WP Pipeline. As I said, there's some more to it than that, but you can all go through that, but that should get you going and running everything okay. We've got here this on the right hand side here. Every time we have an action, it will give you a link up here, which is the last requested action. So for instance, if I close that tab up of here, so that's gone now, the last action was for the Curtains for French Doors.net site, and it was the settings info, and I can just redo that and it will just reconnect me and re-bring me in to where I was. So just kind of useful. Sometimes you find you want to close the tabs down to clear off, so you can always go back to where you were. As I said, that kind of finishes off this video.